norms can be good, but they can also be very damaging. They can create unnecessary pressure on parents because we're striving for something that we didn't decide intentionally. It was more programmed into us through the media, through our parents, and everybody around us saying this is the way to do it. And if you don't do it, it's implied that you're a bad mom. But I want you to remember that you're the one who's going to live with the effects of your choices. And so if you're not loving the impact of your decisions, then maybe it's time to hit pause and reflect on, hey, what is working for me and why am I doing these things? Is it because I want to, or is it because I feel like I should? Not that it feels aligned with your values, with your vision of what you see your life being like. Welcome to the Marriage and Motherhood podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Perda. As a marriage coach who's married with 3 kids, I know how much parenthood could change a marriage. If flirting, laughing, and having fun together feels like a thing of the past, then I'm here to teach you that marriage doesn't have to feel so hard with your parents, and your marriage can thrive even when you're in the season of raising kids. Whether you're in a good place in your marriage and you just want to continue growing together, or you're wondering if you even like your spouse anymore, this podcast has something for you. Join me here each week as we dive into what it takes to help your marriage grow and maybe even do a 180. You'll learn ways to handle conflict better, bring that spark back into your relationship, as well as learn how to improve other areas of your life from my lovely guest experts. Are you ready for the next stage of your life in marriage? Let's dive in. Hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Marriage and Motherhood podcast. This is a continuation of the series that I am doing about the things that I wish I knew before having kids and how it all affects our marriage. Because let's be honest here, if you take a look back on how your marriage was prior to having kids, I'm sure it looks vastly different. No matter your circumstance, it was vastly different. And this week, we're talking about the overwhelm and pressure that comes with becoming parents and raising kids and how that affects marriage. So shout out to Leanne. She's the one that requested this topic. As soon as I saw this, I was like, yeah, this is a no-brainer. This needs to be covered because I feel like the pressure and the overwhelm of parenthood is what makes a lot of marriage hard because it changes so much, right? I know prior to having kids, when I look back, life felt much, much simpler. Now, I will say that I have a different experience when it comes to marriage before kids because when I got married, that made me a stepmom. And although I was already a parental figure for my stepson prior to us getting married, he was just under 2 when I came into his life officially. My husband and I were friends before, so I had met his son before that. And then we got married when he was 4, and we had him half the time. So I was a parent half the time. And so we had about half of our time as a married couple as kid-free adults. And so that's slightly different. And I just want to put that out there. But when we didn't have him, we had so much time to do stuff. Basically, everything we did was a date. And we could just go do whatever. We could go hang out with friends if we wanted. We could go on a short trip without really caring about keeping someone else in mind, just as long as we made it back in time for the switch. And everything was just like, okay, when we want to do it, that's when we're going to do it. But then once kids come, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but once kids come, we are now having to work around someone's schedule and keep their wants and needs in mind. Otherwise, they're struggling, and then we got to deal with their struggle, right? Whether they're overtired or they're throwing tantrums. And so what you do after kids changes. You can't just on a whim go do something, because you need to factor them in, whether it's planning for who's going to watch them or bringing them along, make sure you have all their things. There's just more layers of planning involved. And there's the shift in dynamics when it comes to being a kid-free adult and then a adult with a kid as it pertains to your marriage. So you were once a couple, but now you're also a couple, individuals, mom and dad, and co-parents. So there's this added responsibility and added pressure onto the marriage. So it's not only things that pertain to your relationship that could upset the overall harmony of your relationship. It's now if you dislike how they handled something, if you dislike how they are not doing enough, if they are high stress. There's just so many ways that can affect your dynamic with your partner now, because there's more variables to take into consideration. Whereas before it's like, it doesn't affect me. I don't really care what you do as long as you don't negatively impact me. But now you have this high stake dynamic because this is also your child. And sometimes parents disagree with how to raise a child, from how you parent them, how you discipline them, how you want them to grow up being like, what values you instill in them, what traditions you want to put in place for them to grow up with. Just so many decisions that can come to a disagreement. And I don't know about you, but there's so much that you can't plan for, right? Like you're never fully ready to have kids. And once you have kids, even if you're like on top of things and you have conversations prior to having kids to make sure you're on the same page, there's always going to be something that you didn't realize you had to talk about, that you just made an assumption that you'd be on the same page with, until you reach that thing and you're like, oh, we don't agree on this. And then it becomes conflict. Right. And so there's just more stakes, more things that we care about that impact us because of that added dynamic of being parents and co-parents. There's just a lot of things that create a lot of emotional change when it comes to couples after they have kids. When you first decide to have kids, it's a very exciting thing. And then the kids come and you're like, whoa, okay, let's hunker down. There's so many things to do. It seems like it's just one day that lasts for a really long time, probably for several years, because there's just so much to do. You don't have time to think. You don't have time to breathe, it feels like sometimes. And you're like in go, go, go mode. It pretty much reminds me of like what I've been through over the past several months with deciding to move from the West Coast to the East Coast in the United States, which meant selling a house, moving in with my parents temporarily, buying a house, renovating without even seeing the house, managing that project in a different time zone, and then actually moving and settling into a place that we've only visited a couple times. And so my life feels like it's been a whirlwind. I feel like we accomplished so much in just the span of several months. And although I got more sleep this time around compared to having a newborn, it really does feel like, because there is so much to do, so many different tasks to take care of, so many things to think about, that it's just now that I'm feeling like, oh, I can settle down now. I can breathe. I can slow down. I don't have so many projects to manage and people to tend to while I'm so busy. And it's like you hit that moment when the kids get older, right? When they get to school age, where you're like, okay, right? And it just is so much to do that it creates that much pressure, because when the kids are awake, you're just trying to find things for them to do, keep them fed, keep them healthy and taken care of, and everything just revolves around them. And if you work outside the home, or if you work full-time from home, then it's like a lot of the times that you do have with the kids, it's stressful time, because it's getting them out the door to wherever they're going, whether it's school or daycare. And then when they come home from wherever they went, then it's like dinner, bedtime, right? And then you're left with very little time for yourself, if at all. And there's so much planning to do and taking care of things. And then you got house management, right? And then it's just exponentially busier than before you had kids. And so it was much, much easier to prioritize your marriage prior to kids. And then now you're really forced to prioritize the marriage if you think to do that. A lot of couples end up just falling into that, hustle of parenting, and they forget about prioritizing the marriage. They forget that it needs to be nurtured still, because you guys are just operating as teammates, if that, to get things going and accomplish things when it comes to taking care of the kids and the house, but not so much for yourself or for the marriage, which is where the pressure and the overwhelm thrives. Because when we don't take care of ourselves, when we don't nurture our marriage, then we start to have a lot less capacity to deal with the stress that comes with being parents, to deal with any bad mood that our partner has, or any shortcomings that they might display because of their own reasons. And we're just a lot less forgiving because we are burned out. Okay, like the parental responsibilities combined with work, if you guys work, combined with just maybe even a lack of support if you don't live near parents, or maybe your parents aren't all that helpful when it comes to supporting your life as a parent, then there's that too, right? It's a lot to do with just two of you. I mean, there's a reason why they say it takes the village, but not everyone has a village. And so that could really add to the pressure and overwhelm that couples may feel in modern day parenting, where it does seem like in a lot of places, parenting is done in a vacuum, right? You're just kind of like in your own world with your partner, and it's all on you guys, which is a lot. And then not to mention sleep deprivation, right? Like my kids that live with me now are 7 and 4. And even with that, it does feel like sometimes we just don't get enough sleep. Sometimes it's self-induced because I just want to stay up doing what I want to do. I think I saw somewhere it was like being rebellious, like, hey, this is my time. You can't tell me what to do, even if it means going to sleep. And then other times it's just like there's just a lot to do, and I'm just not going to get to bed at the time that I need to. And so sleep deprivation plays a huge role in terms of how much we can handle as well, and how available we are to our partners, to our kids, in terms of who we want to be, what kind of mom we want to be, what kind of spouse we want to be, how available we are to be playful, patient, kind, compassionate, loving, and with your partner, intimate, right? And so that lack of sleep, rest, as well as maybe not even having any personal time for yourself, which I would argue, even if you do have personal time for yourself, the quality of what you do hugely matters, right? Because there are some things that you can do that seem like you're doing for self-care, but it's actually draining your energy. I'm very excited to have a guest come on soon, where we'll talk about energy management. So I'm very excited for you all to listen to that episode when it airs. But some things we do give us life, and other things we do drain that life away from us. And so, really understanding what things give energy to you will make a huge difference when it comes to deciding what you do for self care on your personal time. And when we don't know how to fill our cups by doing the right kinds of things, which I cannot tell you what they are because it's all dependent on the person. We're all different people. Someone might like to read, someone might like to draw, someone might like to just sit in a room by themselves and meditate, right? There's a lot of different ways you can recharge yourself. And until you know what that is, you may actually be continually running on a hamster wheel and not realize that you are doing that. And so you're just burned out. Okay. The other things that can contribute to pressure and overwhelm for parents is financial stress. Having kids costs a lot of money. They say that the average cost to raise a child to the age of 18 is now 200 to 300 something $1,000 for a middle income family. And that can go up higher if you're in a higher income family. And so that's a lot of money, right? So multiply that by the number of kids that you have. And so that is a huge shift in your expenses and a lot to consider when it comes to financial planning when you're thinking about your investments, your retirement, what kind of life you want after you are a certain age. And so managing finances can be really stressful because a lot of families are living check to check because there's just more groceries to buy, more things in general, clothes, activities, school stuff, extracurriculars. There's just a lot of additional expenses. And so it's a huge lifestyle change, right? And so if you are struggling with that, that can bring on a lot of arguing unless you have the tools on how to communicate healthily, to work through that and really lean on the partnership to work through that together. And with that comes the potential strain on the relationship because there is so much added responsibility and so much added stress from all the things to do, potentially having financial issues. Then there is communication problems that come with that. There is also a change or drop in intimacy and a uptick on miscommunication, right? So navigating how you get through conflict together, navigating your different parenting styles, what it is that you're wanting, how you guys are helping each other as partners, who's taking on what responsibilities. All of these things affect your physical connection as well as your emotional connection. And so that can really put a damper on those. And communication problems feed into that, right? They affect your intimacy level. And vice versa. If you are not feeling connected, that's going to affect your communication and how well you can navigate that. Because if you don't have good feelings towards your partner, you're going to communicate with them a lot differently. And when you communicate differently, you're also not going to have good feelings towards your partner. So it's just like this vicious cycle that feeds into each other until something changes. And then you can rebuild that emotional intimacy, which then also creates desire to physically connect. Okay, so there needs to be like a break in the cycle when it comes to that. But if there's no desire for growth in terms of how you communicate, then the connection piece will not get better. and the intimacy will struggle to change as well. But I think the most important aspect when it comes to the pressure and overwhelm comes from societal expectations, as well as your own personal assumptions and expectations that you have on yourself that you may or may not even know. Okay? Because the way we view parenting, if you look at every country and how they view parenting, or even state to state, because now I've noticed how people parent in California and how people parent in Georgia. And I will say it's different. So, even regionally within the same country, societal norms are different. And so, how we view parenting is largely decided and influenced by where we grew up. How did our parents parent? How did our parents' friends parent? What are the things that they've passed down to make us think that, oh, this is normal? And until you expose yourself to different forms of parenting styles and norms, you're not going to think to question, oh, I didn't realize I could do it differently. Because you don't know that you are essentially parenting out of this manual that has been passed down to you. And so you can feel a lot of pressure to be a certain way, just like how based on the movies. I'm sure a lot of you at one point had this dream, maybe it's still your dream, to have a house with a white picket fence. And so society and the media and our circle that we were raised in heavily influences what we think we should be doing as moms, how we define a good mom, how we define a good wife, how we define a good neighbor, a good daughter, a good whatever, right? Fill in the blank. And so we have this pressure, which is, by the way, self imposed to be quote unquote perfect. Whether that's creating Pinterest looking things, to how they dress in school, how they perform in school, how involved you are in school, making things from scratch, attending every single social function you're invited, how much time you spend with your kids, what you do with your kids, what boundaries or lack of boundaries you have with them and with other people. So, a lot of what I speak to is about challenging that. Norms can be good, but they can also be very damaging. They can also create unnecessary pressure on parents, on people, because we're striving for something that we didn't decide intentionally to strive for. It was more programmed into us through the media, through our parents, and everybody around us saying this is the way to do it. And if you don't do it, it's implied that you're a bad mom. But I want you to remember that you're the one who's going to live with the effects of your choices. And so if you're not loving the impact of what you're doing right now, of your decisions, then maybe it's time to hit pause and reflect on, hey, what is working for me and why am I doing these things? Is it because I want to, or is it because I feel like I should? Because if it's something you're doing because you think you should, then that's more of you trying to be compliant, not that it feels aligned with your values, with your vision of what you see your life being like. Okay, I actually have a masterclass that is free on how to create your own family vision so that you can get more clarity around things that you can drop, things that you can add, so that everything that you're doing, or at least most of it, let's apply the 80-20 rule here because we're not perfect, but a lot of the things that you're doing on a day-to-day basis is helping you get closer and closer to the overall vision that you want for your life as a individual and as family. Okay, because I don't want you to just take this like cookie cutter lifestyle and be like, oh yeah, okay, this is what I do, I'll just follow the directions, I'll just go with the flow with what everyone else is doing, because that is not a fulfilling life. Okay. A fulfilling life looks like understanding yourself. What do I want? What do I need? And then coming together with your partner to develop a vision and a plan that both of you are on board with, not just doing things because of peer pressure, not because you're like, oh, well, I should, and so I guess I will. Like, you don't want to live a life full of regret. And so I challenge you to live a life that doesn't look identical to everybody else, for you to develop your own family values and go for it unapologetically with your partner. At the end of the day, it's your life. So unless you're happy with it, it doesn't even matter what other people think. Okay? So make sure that you're living a life on your terms. Obviously, as long as it doesn't hurt other people intentionally, go for it, okay? Because I don't want you to look back and be filled with regret because you thought that you were supposed to have life a certain way. And then you're like, oh, shoot. I have a friend named Annie. Shout out to Annie if she's listening to this. She actually encouraged me to become a marriage coach. And she led a life that looked a lot like what she thought she was supposed to do. She went into pharmacy school to become a pharmacist because her mom was a pharmacist. And then after working as a pharmacist, all she wanted to do was just stab her eyes out. And she ended up quitting her career against what everyone thought she should do because it just doesn't make logical sense for her to do that. After all that education and all the years of experience she had, it wasn't aligned. And so she said, fuck it, this is my life, and became a coach. And now she is loving life. She's a coach, she's a phenomenal photographer. And I think that's so, so brave. And even though she's had a lot of challenges along the way, she was up for them because she was building a life that she loved, not because she was living a lie only to appease her parents. You are in charge of what your life looks like. So work with your partner to see where you can make some adjustments. It doesn't have to be crazy, but like, where can you make adjustments with how you have your day planned out, what you guys do, and how it can feel better, more easeful, right? Like, I love that there are things we can do to simplify our lives, and simplicity truly is so freeing. Where are you overcomplicating your life where you can simplify it? And that is a fantastic way to be proactive about managing stress, because if you're not putting yourself in a position where it's just stress on stress on stress, then you have the capacity to handle stressful situations rather than continuously setting yourself up for a life of stress. On top of that, making sure that you're really setting and designing your life to be aligned with the kind of lifestyle that you want, making sure that you have healthy communication with your partner, because having kids does require a level of planning and coordinating with each other and truly leaning on each other as partners. And without that, it is very difficult and can lead to a lot of miscommunication and conflict that can really be avoided. Okay. Making sure you take care of yourselves so you're not just always on edge and any little deviation is setting you off, as well as making sure you take care of you guys as a couple, really nurturing that, having alone time together, whether it's after the kids are in bed, going out on dates, going on vacations together, even, is incredible. Okay, because your relationship health does make such a large impact on how you experience life. Your marriage is actually the most impactful relationship when it comes to your well-being, your satisfaction with life. And so if you're going to go for, what has the most bang for your buck, it's that. Okay? Because when your kids are mad at you, okay, it kind of hurts, but it doesn't ruin your entire day. But when you and your spouse are fighting, oh, it's like your whole life is just on the rocks and it feels so bad. So make sure that the person that you started the family with, that you are good with each other, because that is really going to affect how you feel on a daily basis and how you experience your life. And of course, if you are needing help reach out for help. Go see a marriage coach like me, go see a therapist, go see whoever you feel like would best help you so that you can cope with these things, so that you can get an outsider's perspective on how you can continue to set yourself for success when it comes to your experience of being a woman, a wife, a mom, and shine some light on areas that can do better with some adjustments and enhance the skills that you're using when it comes to navigating marital stress as well as parental stress and overwhelm, because we are no good to anybody if we are not feeling our best. So if you are feeling a lot of pressure and overwhelm, I urge you to get support. Lean on your friends, go see a professional, whatever it is. You deserve to feel like life is good in general. Okay? If it feels more hard than it is good, then it's time to do something about it. Okay? Well, that's all I have for you today. I hope you like this. If you have any topic suggestions, hit me up on Instagram. I would love to hear. And I also would love to hear how this episode landed for you. What are your takeaways? What are some realizations that you are making while listening to this? And what are you going to implement going forward because of what you learned in this episode? Okay. Now, if you really love this episode and you want to support the show, I would really appreciate if you share this with someone that you think would benefit from hearing this, as well as leaving a rating and review over on iTunes. I love reading what you write and knowing that what I'm sharing is making a difference in your life. It is what I love to do. And I hope that you are getting a lot from this show. And I'll catch you back here on the next episode. Bye. That's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it. If you did, please send me a message over on Instagram at Michelle Perta Coaching to let me know what you loved most about it. Hearing from my listeners is my absolute favorite. And if you've been loving this podcast, please leave a rating and review. This will help people like you find the show and get the help they need. Catch you here on the next episode. Bye.